Welcome. Hello, everybody. My name is Miranda Glavin. I'll tell you a bit more about Get Career Confident, well, briefly, a little bit more about Get Career Confident in a moment. This webinar is all about motivation. Very hot topic on a very hot day. I'm slightly melting in my office. Hopefully you guys are a bit cooler. As I said, for those of you who don't know me, well, I've got a few things coming up through chat. I'm just going to double check that's all okay. Oh, hello, I'm here. That's good to know. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, just very briefly, I'm a careers advisor. I'm the founder and director of Elevate Careers, which is a careers guidance and education company based in Brighton. You can get hold of me on those emails there. This PowerPoint will go on our website along with a recording. Hopefully that won't make you disappear, but obviously it's live at the moment. But if you want to use any of the links, you'll be able to access this PowerPoint later on. So there's quite a lot in here and I'm not going to be able to cover everything. So it might be, you might want to reflect back on it later on. Get Career Confident is a project that I run with the Sussex Learning Network. And this is what's funding these webinars. This is the last, Thursdays is the last of the teachers one, and this kind of round will probably hopefully do some more later in the year. We are doing lots of different things for the young people in Brighton and Hove in Sussex, including careers interviews, which primarily focused in 13 schools. We've just opened it up to schools across Sussex. So if you're coming from a school that we're not working with, you can encourage your students and parents to sign up for an appointment on our website. So please do that. CPD, including webinars like this, are happening now all online. But previously we were doing some face-to-face things as well. And lastly, we've got a huge range of careers education resources. Please have a look at them on our website. And we've got 3 social media channels dedicated to one to parents, one to teachers and one to students, which are updated every day. So lots going on online to support you in these remote virtual times. Okay, so motivation. This is what I'm going to be covering. Like I said, once I started kind of getting into the thick of it, I realized what a big topic it was. And my background's in psychology, so I have studied quite a lot of this before, but applying it to the circumstances that we're in, especially is difficult because there are so many things going on. But this is really a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but also hopefully some really practical things you can take away to implement with whatever it is that whoever you're working with and in whatever way. So whether you're a careers advisor or a teacher with careers responsibility or a careers leader, and even if you actually aren't working in careers, this will probably still be very, very relevant. And if you're a parent as well. So I think I've touched every possible base, but like I said, if there are things that you're thinking, I'm not sure about this as I'm talking, or you're not sure how it applies to your role, let me know in the Q&A and I'll do my best to direct you to other material or things that I may not have covered in this. Okay, so just to kick us off, some definitions of motivation, because that's always helpful just to make sure we're all on the same page. There's 3 there. The last one is the one I'm going to draw your attention to in particular for what I'm going on to say, which is that line: motivation involves the biological, emotional, social and cognitive forces that activate behaviour. And I thought that was a really important one to pick up on at the moment, because when we're talking about young people, already the biology is haywire, that's going to impact their ability to feel motivated and to be able to act on that motivation massively. So even in a normal world, normal environment, that's already happening. And emotional and social, I think we're all being hugely impacted by the pandemic in terms of our emotional intelligence. We don't have the same social interactions as we're used to, and that is even more true for young people. I don't know if you guys have noticed, sort of as soon as the lockdown was lightly lifted, suddenly you've got massive gangs of young people suddenly hanging out together, whether or not that's a good idea. But they're desperate for that that interaction. And of course, the cognitive forces, you know, the ability to think ahead is limited as a teenager. So there's, you know, there's lots going on basically with motivation before we even get into the sort of nitty gritty of it. I wanted to just touch on some theories of motivation. This isn't all of them, but they're ones that are worth kind of mentioning. I'm sure most of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you haven't, I've got it there, but, you know, look it up as well. You know, if we just go from the bottom and the second one up, safety needs, you know, already we can see that that's kind of made everything beyond that a little bit too much, because frankly, you know, most people are not feeling very safe at the moment. So trying to encourage people to be, you know, finding, you know, being able to self-actualize and fulfill their purpose is all very well and good if everything else is okay, but when the world's in a topsy-turvy state, that's pretty big ask. The carrot and stick approach, you know, unfortunately our education system is somewhat based on that. It's, you know, incentives and, let's not call it fear, but let's call it obligations. And at the moment, we don't have that so much. You know, the exams aren't happening. So suddenly young people are left in a kind of strange, oh, well, what was the point then? Which I'll come on to in a minute, but, you know, how we deal with that. But it's, I think, you know, even though it's not necessarily the best way to encourage motivation, it is a way that is very normal and common. And then the last one is around environmental adaptation. So what can you do, or what is there that will encourage you to feel motivated or demotivated? And I think that's a really important element of what I'm talking about today, because there are things you can do to improve your motivation just by improving what is around you, or changing what is around you. So what does being motivated feel like? Because that's a kind of a funny question in a way, but I think it's an important one. I think we know maybe what it feels like when you don't feel motivated. You kind of feel, oh, can't be bothered, you want to distract yourself, procrastinate, you know, I don't know. That's kind of, you're familiar probably with that. But how does it feel when you do feel motivated? Most of us feel maybe energized, excited, confident, maybe focused, and you know, these kind of sensations feel good. You know, they're things that we want to be feeling, but often when you're faced with a kind of environment that isn't conducive to that, you forget that those things feel good, and you just think, well, actually, you know, it's hard to get out of that disengagement. Two of the things which make it kind of have a big impact on how you feel are around intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So if you haven't come across these before, intrinsic is all about having a sort of personal answer for why you're doing something. So whether it's to progress, to get more competent, to feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of meaning by kind of adding value or support to someone else, those are all ways that we can encourage ourselves to do something by feeling good about it within ourselves, versus the extrinsic, which is all about getting some sort of reward or avoiding a punishment, you know, so it's external sort of stimuli. And again, I think a lot of the time it's quite tricky to encourage young people to tap into that intrinsic motivation. You know, they tend to rely on extrinsic, but actually if we can get to the intrinsic, then we're going somewhere, because that's where you get those really good feelings. And sometimes it's really worth kind of pointing that out to a young person. Oh, I'm going to go back actually, if I can. I'm going to do a quick poll because I'm interested to know how motivated you think students are at the moment. So since the lockdown, are you finding students are more motivated or less motivated? What's your experience at the moment? I think my poll's working. I hope my poll's working. Seems to be. Oh, there we go. Yay, it's up. Technology is always fun, isn't it? Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me know if you can't. Yeah, you're voting. Excellent. Right. Okay. 100% less. Yeah. Probably why you're here, but you never know, there might be someone out there thinking, actually, I mean, I have heard a few students that seem to be really, you know, this suits who they are, but I'm kind of with you that the majority are definitely not enjoying it. Okay, so yeah, that literally, and everybody is thinking that they're less motivated. So that would tie in very much with these findings. So UniFrog, which I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of, which do kind of careers education software, online software, and they've done a piece of work with their with students who are signed up to their program, and I think there's about 2,500 students responded, with pretty much 50% of them saying they felt less motivated. So it's not 100%, which is great. In fact, 32% say it hasn't made a difference, and some said they feel more motivated. So, you know, maybe that's reflecting a bit of a wider population of people. But yeah, we can't ignore the fact that young people are feeling less inclined to focus on the positives and to move forward towards things. So, I mean, why do we think this has happened? I'm sure you've got some ideas. I think these are the things that, you know, came into my head, and which the research is suggesting. One of the things we talked about already was, you know, exams, a lack of. There goes the ice cream van. It's strange hearing that. So a lack of exams to work towards. You know, the carrot's not there anymore. Now what do you do? I think it's a bit worrying or sad to hear that a lot of year 11s and year 13s expect to get worse grades than they would have done if they, I mean, who knows if that's true or not, but it doesn't matter because that's how they feel. So they feel all that time that they put into working has just been taken away from them. So of course that's going to have a massively detrimental effect on their motivation. You know, the structure and routine that they're used to is gone, and young people struggle to create that, and it's so important. So another thing which is kind of hard to kind of cope with. There's a bit of a conflict with, you know, young people have that desire for autonomy, which is why they pull away, but actually they need their parents, they need the structure of school. So even though they've been given sort of some freedom, actually they feel like, oh God, that's too much. Now what do I do? There's a lack of support, and this is not a pointing the finger at all at teachers, but just the fact that they're not in school every day, and they're not seeing their friends, they're not seeing their teachers. It's all kind of, you know, happening remotely. That's a lot to take on. Too much social media. I don't think I need to say much more about that, but show me a young person that isn't living their life through social media, and yeah, I'd be very surprised. And there's that thing about sort of this weird limbo that we're in. You know, we have so little answers about what's going to happen. You know, how is education going to move forward? What's the job market going to look like? Will my university be online or not? All of that is a limbo. And, you know, motivation is either a pull by a desire to do something, or a push by a drive. And if you're in a sort of limbo where none of those things are really happening, then, you know, you're adrift, aren't you? So it's completely understandable that they're going to be feeling less motivated than previous years. So we're getting on to, I'll just do a quick time check. There's lots to cover in this one. You're probably wondering why I put some chips there, but I'll come to that in a second. So control, this is a sort of a first area to look at. So control versus choice. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the feeling of motivation, you know, because it's all very well and good saying, you know, you need a SMART plan, which we'll come to in a minute, but how, you know, if they're not feeling it, then it is partly towards the behavior changing how you feel, but you also need to cultivate that feeling. So what are the kind of things that you can do to encourage a young person, or yourself even, to feel motivated? So one of the things is around control and choice. So when we feel that we have a choice, when we feel that we are responsible for our own decisions and we've got ownership over those decisions, there is more space for intrinsic motivation. And I think, you know, as educators, it's about collaborating with that and trying as much as we can not to control or to say, well, if you do that, that's wrong, and if you do that, that's right, because that already gets young people into a sense of, you know, there's no point, I might as well disengage, because whatever I say, they're going to say something different. So, you know, the control and choice is a really kind of crucial part of motivation. I think one thing is assume that particularly young people, but all of us have very little willpower. My example of chips is, who has ever just said, I'll have one chip, and has had one chip? It's just not possible, because willpower is a thing, obviously, but most of us, given the opportunity, if we're put in the environment where the thing that we're trying to not do or to do is there, it's really hard to not do it, you know. So removing temptations, so whether that's, you know, if they've got a computer and a games console right next to each other, separate them, you know, with their permission, not permission, but in conversation with them. But if you're a careers advisor having chats and you can see that they've surrounded themselves with distractions instead of doing their work, for example, then that is a really, not simple, but it's something that you can do which will make a difference immediately. I've just noticed someone's done a Q&A. I'm just going to double check it's not. Oh, I can only see what we are going to cover on my screen. Are there other slides? Oh no. Is anyone else having that problem? I hope not. It might be something to do with your computer, with your reception. I'll double check that. I haven't had any messages saying it's gone kaput. Let's see. Okay, other people are saying that they can see the slides fine, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know what the problem is. Someone else can see this. Okay, I'll carry on then, and hopefully you can look at these later. So apologies for that. I think it must be at your end, but thanks for letting me know. So where was I? Yes, chips. Moving on from chips. So yeah, I talked about removing distractions, so shaping the environment basically to shape behaviour. If you normally there are kind of rules in place. Rules are often an opportunity for young people to rebel. So, you know, if you say that you must or you should do something, then already they're kind of going, well, I don't want to do that. So again, it's about that, giving them the choice. So how about, you know, I hate saying things like this because it's not completely true, but it is like talking to a smaller person, to a young child, because if you give them 2 or 3 options, all of which are good ones, then they're more likely to feel better than if you just give them one option, even if it is still a good one. So, you know, encourage them to work with what we've got, you know, that they can be more flexible. They can get up later potentially if they don't have online lessons. Take more breaks, focus on what they really are interested in. Help them to create their own routines which work for them. Again, you know, as adults, we have better ability at doing that. But, you know, they might need our help. So see, you know, do they need some support in breaking down their day, for example? All of the obvious things like good food, sleep, exercise are super important. But I think this last one is really, really key. Ask them to consider when they say yes to something, what are they saying no to? Because often, you know, again, it's around that behavior and choices that we don't actually recognize the ways that we're tripping ourselves up, because we're just going about, you know, what we're doing and then not thinking, and then wondering why we're not achieving what we want to achieve or doing very much, because you realize you've just spent the last 2 months playing computer games or seeing your friends even though you're not meant to. And you think, oh, why is my schoolwork suffering? So it's, you know, it's helping them see that balance. Okay, I'm going to speed through these ones. This is really around the kind of career stuff and working hard, really, because we need to feel that we have something that we're looking forward towards. We need to have goals, basically. Humans are a bit rubbish without them. And they're even better if they have a personal meaning. So a external enforced goal, like you must finish your GCSEs, is okay. But if you can link that with you must finish your GCSEs, because if you do that, you can get into this college and then you can go to that university, or you can do that apprenticeship, which you are interested in, is much better. So it's just not seeing it as the kind of end goal, which is something that they don't really understand why, but linking it to something which they really do. So helping people find their long and short term focuses and aspirations. So exposure to inspirational C2B videos are a good suggestion there. I think that's not linkable. I'll make sure that's linkable before I upload it to the website. short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. You know, that's a really hard one for young people to get their heads around, but it's an important one. Push back on if they say they don't like something, but it's important that they complete it. Then you can say to them, you know, okay, I know you don't like it, but how can you still succeed despite not liking it? Because that's giving them almost a competitive thing. Okay, actually, well, how could I figure out how to do this thing that I really hate, rather than just giving up completely. And those students that like to coast, you know, there's a lot of them. I think this quote, it's not how talented you are that matters, but how dedicated you are. Because we all know that the coasters quite often end up being the ones that kind of fail in the long term, because things get harder, but they don't try. And then they get, oh, now I'm not trying, I'm not very good at it. And then they get depressed and they get demotivated. So give them stretch goals to keep them engaged. Okay. Sorry, I don't know what, some strange thing is going on here. It's a bit of a weird. Can you guys all still hear me? You can just say in the Q&A if you can still hear me. It would be very helpful. Yeah, that's really strange. Technology is going a bit mental today. I'm just going to go back to sharing this. I don't know what that was about. It opened another Zoom. Who knows why? It's a mystery. Yes, thank you for all letting me know. It's a weird old one. It's the heat. It's the heat on my brain, or it's the heat on the computer, or maybe a combination of the two. So last one I'm just going to look at before we get onto the kind of tips is around this idea of competition, recognition, and also cooperation. So what can you do to encourage young people to, you know, everyone has things in their lives that they are committed to, even if they don't feel like they are. And it could be something as simple as playing lots of computer games, but it might be something, you know, quite niche. You know, there's all sorts of interesting things once you dig a little bit deeper into young people's lives that they're really into. And it's sometimes quite a good idea to find out, okay, what do they get from that? You know, is it the recognition when they do well at a computer game? Is it if they like baking, is it the feeling of, you know, a joy when other people enjoy their food? You know, what is it? And how can they bring those elements into the other areas of their life where they're potentially feeling less motivated? So I think that's, you know, helping them see what is important to them. Is it that they like to be recognized? Is it a need, that competition? Do they need to work with others? I think that's a really important one at the moment, because we all feel a bit sort of, you know, isolated, but, you know, they can still have online Zoom learning hangouts, you know, they can revise together, or, you know, do coursework together. That's all really possible. So, you know, if they can help friends with their work, with their aspirations, maybe, you know, I used to do a lot of encouragement when I, talking about it in the past tense, like it was so long ago, when I was going in and doing workshops with young people, I'd encourage them, if we're talking about work experience, for example, to do on a board any, you know, what they were interested in, and then people could go and look at it and they'd say, oh, my dad does that, or my auntie does that, and then you see if there was any connections that could be made. So, you know, that kind of stuff can still happen online. And I think a really simple one, but a lovely one, is showing appreciation. You know, when a young person says they've done something in your careers conversation or in school environment, and you know, even if it's a really little thing, recognize it, appreciate it, compliment it, because everyone loves it. Even if you say you don't like hearing it, everyone does. Well, it's a hell of a lot better than hearing that was a bit rubbish, which some young people, you know, unfortunately hear a lot. So, you know, finding ways to make them feel good about themselves, because no one feels motivated if they don't feel good about themselves. It's a really tough thing to do. Okay, so yeah, oh gosh, so much to cover with this one. Okay, I'm going to do this speedily. I have a little quick, not test, but an example scenario. So you're working with a student who's not doing as well as predicted with their grades. Just doing a quick poll. What would you ask? Okay, so you're going to have a little think about this. Would you say, why are you failing? Would you say, What kinds of grades do you think you can achieve? Would you say, why aren't you working hard enough? Those are the 3 questions, and I am launching the polling, and hopefully the poll will ping up. Yeah, I think it's pinged up. Okay. Well, either I'm a very good teacher or you're all just exceptionally brilliant. I'm going to go for the latter. Yeah, I mean, really, you want to be asking the second one, what kind of grades do you think you can achieve? And if you don't already know why you've answered that, it's back to that thing around choice and challenge. So by asking them what they think they can cope with, you're encouraging some self-reflection. You're getting some important information from them about how they view themselves and their potential. And it's a starting place for either encouragement or some challenge, rather than just automatically giving them blame. And, you know, everyone who's here who obviously answered what I would say is the best question to ask, I'm sure already has an idea about this. But unfortunately, personally, I've heard variations of answer of question 1 and 3 numerous times in my life from teachers and other staff and parents. And I think, you know, when you're in a state of like frustration, it's really easy to go, well, what's wrong with you? You know, what are you doing? But obviously that is the worst thing to say, especially to a teenager. So, you know, it's about opportunities for asking those kind of questions that will open up a dialogue and help them to become more motivated, and, you know, helping them to break down tasks that fits in with other areas of their life. And, you know, it's giving them the opportunity to problem solve, not you doing it for them or causing them more harm than good. So that's just a little, you know, example. Right, what can you do? Hopefully by now you've encouraged and forged some sort of environment that will help them feel or start to feel more motivated. What are the actual tools that you can use to then push them forward to actually achieve whatever it is that they need to be achieving? So first one, again, I'm sure everyone's heard of this, but it's so important. Any goals that anybody has need to be SMART. So that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. And usually I would use actually New Year's resolutions as a good example. How many of us have made, I should have done this as a poll, how many of us have made a New Year's resolution and then, you know, a day later, a week, a month, a push later have given up completely? I'll put my hand up because, yes, I'm sure we will all put our hands up there. How many of you have made a SMART New Year's resolution? And I'm going to hazard a guess that's none or a lot less of you. And that's probably part of the problem, because most of us go, yeah, I'm going to, I don't know, go to the gym 3 times a week, or not even that, go to the gym more, which is just, you know, what does that mean? Does that mean 3 times a week? Does it mean which day, which class? If you don't go, how are you going to get, you know, there's so many more elements to it that if you had all of those planned out, you would find it a lot harder. So for example, you know, if you know that you can never go on certain days, but you've in your head thinking, oh, I'll make that class, it's never going to happen. Or, you know, it needs to be really specific. So, or measurable, I think would be a good example with this, that you have a friend that calls you up to check you've gone, or you meet there, because then you're kind of giving yourself an extra reason to go and they will notice. So there's lots of things you can do around SMART, which makes a big difference. In terms of habits, this is just something for you to make clear with young people, that anything that you change in your life is always horrible at first. And that sounds kind of like, well, why do you want to do it? Because most things, you know, the brain has patterns, we have familiarity, where then if you try and impose something different, the brain kind of doesn't know what to do, and it tries to make you feel like it's not a good thing. But if you know that the thing you're working towards is a good thing, you've kind of got to work through and just remind yourself that eventually your brain will get used to it. And that goes for anything from, you know, stopping smoking to, you know, whatever. Certainly in terms of changing your revision patterns, for example. At first it will feel uncomfortable, and then it'll become normal, and then eventually it'll become, oh, actually this is great because it's helped me pass, or whatever. regular check-ins, you know, quizzes, prizes, recognition of small achievements, anything you can do that keeps that kind of motivation. Because, you know, if a young person is left to their own devices, again, they're more likely to sort of, you know, just peter out. So it's that constant kind of prodding, and that's one of the things we do with our Streets Ahead program, working with Uni Connect students. It's, you know, one interview is not enough. It needs to be prolonged interventions to get them where they need to go. I like the idea of doing to-don't lists, because we all feel massively overwhelmed. I certainly do. So what do we not have to worry about? Where do our responsibilities end? And that's quite a reassuring thing to sometimes get young people to write down. Visual tools are fantastic. I'm a massive fan of pros and cons lists. You know, anything you can put down on paper and make it really pretty if you want to, but even just written, it's almost like the brain goes, oh, you know, taking it out of here and put it somewhere else, I can rest a bit. So encouraging them to be creative about how they want to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. The 5 whys are really good. Sound annoying, but they work really well. So I've got them on the side here. You've got defining the problem. So what is it that's gone wrong, or that's not working? Why is it happening? Why is it? Why is it? Keep asking why till you get to the root of the problem. And I've got a really good example of that. A few days ago, I interviewed a young man who told me that he really hated online learning, and he was considering not going back to college if it was going to be online again in the autumn term. And I was like, oh no, never mind that if that college was going to be online, probably others would be as well. But I was like, well, you know, why is that? What's happening with your online learning? What are you not enjoying? After a few whys, it became apparent he'd actually not logged in at all. he'd struggled every time to get onto their learning environment. So he hasn't actually done any learning in the last 2 months. So it wasn't online learning that was a problem, it was the logging in. And if I hadn't pushed it any further, I would have just gone with him in that, oh, he can't do online learning, but actually it was a completely different problem. So, you know, helping people to feel motivated is sometimes about unraveling what the actual issue is. Couple more things. Motivational interviewing, brilliant method of doing interviewing. There's lots there, but I've just picked out a couple, which is about being empathetic, which, you know, as careers advisors we practice a lot, but I think it goes for everybody. Reflecting back discrepancies between current behaviour in relation to goals. So if a young person's saying, yeah, I really want to go to university, but then they've not done any of the things that they need to do, sometimes it's a really good idea to just lay it down and say, well, if this is your goal, you need to do this, this and this. But if you're not going to do this, then you have to change the goal. Or you keep the goal and then you do the things. Sometimes, you know, they need a little bit of kind of reality checking. I love this one. It's something I do sometimes. The 3 good things a night. So it's about reframing the brain and refocusing the brain to think positively, which again aids motivation. So it could be, I had a nice sandwich. It could be, I spoke to my best friend. It could be, I stroked a dog. It could be, I played the piano for a little bit. Whatever it is, whatever made you feel good and made you feel good about the world. 3 things every night. And I think it takes, I can't remember how many days it is, but it makes, there's the scientific evidence, it makes a big difference to your mental health and your feelings of positivity about the future. So it's a really good one to do. And, you know, get the basics right. Food, sleep, exercise, get out in nature, the big one. Taking care of your well-being is the first thing really in the steps to become motivated and to stay motivated. Right, final thoughts before I just check there aren't any questions. So if you've got questions, you can you know, put them in the Q&A now. I wanted to say thank you actually, because, you know, we are going through, I don't know, whatever we're going through. It's just a very, very strange time. And, you know, as educators, I think we can all feel a bit demotivated. It takes a lot to make me feel demotivated, but, you know, borderline, it's tricky at the moment. So use what we talked about to help yourself as well as the young people you work with, because, you know, you deserve it and you're doing a sterling job. So thank you. And, you know, maybe try and look at this as much as you can as an opportunity. You know, there is, in theory, some space to do things differently. That's what I'm doing as much as I can. A lot of the material I've used today has come, well, not lots, but a fair amount from these 2 articles, which are great. So I recommend you having read through there. We've also got some stuff on the side here, which, you know, some of it's a repetition of what we've talked about. There's a few other little bits and pieces. This won't be forever. Promise. Oh, that's weird. There was another slide, but it's disappeared. Oh, there it is. Oh, that's pretty strange. Some strange technological things going on today. I've got one last webinar on Thursday for teachers, which is around integrating careers into your online, and a little bit on non-online curriculum. There will be more webinars coming from Janet College, who's an amazing careers professional. She runs Career Defender, and we had a load of career webinars for parents and carers last week, which are on our website. So please share those with parents in your schools. They're you know, fairly general and will work for most schools and colleges across Sussex, really. I'm just going to look at Q&As and see what's popped up. Lots of, you're back online, so that's good. Hopefully you guys didn't miss too much of what I was seeing. Really sorry about that. Doesn't look like there's any questions. I'm hoping that you're all still there with me. Let's just check there's nothing in the chat. What I will do is hang around and see if there's anyone who wants to ask me anything in the chat box. There's no questions in the Q&A. Just double check again, because it is being a bit of a naughty internet today. Typical. What will happen at the end when you log off is there'll be a very short little survey just to get some feedback on whether this was, you know, what you were expecting, if there were things you wish we'd covered, if there are other things outside of motivation that would be helpful for me to run through. I'd love to know, you know, this is for you guys, so I want to do what's the most helpful thing. So yeah, please let me know. I will, if we haven't got any other questions, I'll just double check my phone, check there's nothing going on there. I will say so long and enjoy this stunning, is the sun still out? I think it's still out. Feels like it's still out. The stunning weather. Take care, everybody. I'll be back on Thursday, hopefully with better internet. Don't know what was going on with that. So yeah, if any of you are coming back again, I look forward to it. Otherwise, take care. I will hang around here, so you'll have to leave because I'll just wait till you all go before I disappear. But thank you, everybody, and let me know if you've got any questions. You can always email me afterwards if things pop into your head. Oh, actually, yes, that's a good question. Does anyone, if you're still here, does anyone want to share a top tip? There's only a few of you left, but if you do want to share a top tip, I'd love to know it. Well, I will share it if any come through. None so far. Maybe all the ones with top tips had left the building already. I think my top tip for today is stay hydrated, which I don't think I've done enough of. Okay, I'm going to thank you guys. Log off now.